Welcome to this edition of the Locker Room Chat, brought to you by the Shanneman Sports Museum of Tacoma Pierce County and Rainier Asphalt and Concrete, the #1 asphalt and concrete repair contractor in the Tacoma and Seattle area. For quality workmanship and top-notch customer service, contact Rainier Asphalt at www.rainierasphalt.com. That's www.rainierasphalt.com, and let them know that you heard about them right here on the Locker Room Chat. I'm Robert Lowry, your host today, and I am excited and pleased to have as our guest a man who arguably is the best college basketball coach in the state of Washington history, and without question, part of the greatest father-son coaching combination in all of basketball history. We're talking about Coach Dean Nicholson. Coach, I am just thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to talk with you again today. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, I do want to mention that I had the great opportunity and the great pleasure to be the play-by-play voice for a number of years for Central Washington University, and had the great honor to call many of Coach Nicholson's games. And you know, Dean, when I look back at my career, I think that was a huge honor for me, quite frankly. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Central teams today, but we're going to talk about some of your Puyallup teams and some other stuff along the way as well. But I guess the first question, and I've never asked you this, and I've never heard you even talk about this. So was basketball, because you were a good athlete, a real good athlete in high school in a number of sports, was basketball your favorite growing up? And when did you really kind of decide that, yeah, I am a pretty good player?
Well, my father being a coach, I logged gym time almost from day one. So I just naturally grew into it. Basketball was probably my favorite. I loved baseball too, but I was a better basketball player than I was a baseball player. So played 1 year of football at Ellsberg High School, and that kept me busy.
I want you to talk a little bit about your high school career, because everyone knows you as a great coach, but I'm not so sure they realize what a good player you were in high school. You were an all-state player. Talk a little bit about your high school career, and I guess I'm also curious about whether there were other colleges that recruited you to come and play for them as well.
I moved up the ladder. I was a JV player as a sophomore. As a junior, I became a starter on a very good team with all seniors. I was probably the worst athlete on the team, but maybe the best shooter. And we went unbeaten. That was 1943. Leagues were all different then, but the Yakima Valley, we were champions of the Yakima Valley area. And had a real disappointment when they called off the state tournament that year. There was no state tournament in 1943. The following year, all my teammates had graduated. I was the only senior on the team, and we had a much younger team. And we had a pretty good team, and we made it to the state tournament that year, the 44, and won a couple and finished 8th. So we were pretty proud of that too.
Did you have other colleges that were interested in recruiting you and having you come and play for them based on your high school career?
I graduated from high school in June of 1944. I turned 18 shortly after. Those were the war years. The war was still lingering on. It had turned in our favor, but when you turned 18, you were going to go in the service. That was automatic. And I was fortunate that I got into a naval officer training program. And shortly after graduation, we got sent to Fayette, Missouri. There was a college there, Central College. Same name. And with some other friends from the Seattle area, we were back there. We had a unit of about 120 would-be naval officers. and spent a year there in Fayette, Missouri. That's about as far away you could get from water if you're going in the Navy. So we took college courses, and we even had a basketball team, which was all Navy guys, all of us. And we won whatever the league was. Well, we won that area, played a lot fewer games at that time. But anyway, we got a berth in Kansas City Tournament, which still functioned that year, but only 16 teams. And we were a short drive to the tournament, went up and won one game and then lost the second round. But I was very fortunate to be able to continue to play basketball while in the service. A lot of others were doing a lot braver things than that, and that was a real break for me. So there was really no recruitment of me out of high school. I had a very good impression of myself being a high school scorer on a very good team. I think you have a tendency to overrate yourself. I probably had some interest in the University of Washington. I don't think they had that much interest in me, but after a year in the Naval Training Program, the war broke differently, and they were going to discontinue our training. And we had to agree if we had the option to stay in, but we had to commit for 3 more years, which when you're 18, 19, 3 years seems like a whole lifetime. And almost all of our unit opted out, and we ended up going to boot camp. So I finished my Navy career at Great Lakes and ended up finally down in San Diego on a destroyer tender. Didn't see any battle. We didn't go, but that tells the story. When I got back after being discharged from the Navy, and all my friends were back then, I'd been gone, and I really felt the urge to, I was very happy to go to Central and play for my dad, but also be amongst my friends again and catch up. And so that made an easy choice for me.
What was it like being coached by your father? He was a legend in his own right, and is, Leo Nicholson. Was some of the things that happened at practice, then at games and things like that, that later become conversation around the dining room table?
We didn't take things home, really. He was very good about it. And fortunately, I was a good enough player to make the team and start and be of help. So that solved a lot of the problems. You had to have a thick skin when you were the coach's kid playing. I think you still do. You're gonna hear a lot from especially your bitter rivals. But that part you just had to shrug off.
Yeah. Well, all right. You downplay your career as a player a little bit, but I think you do yourself a disservice because you helped lead Central to its first appearance ever in the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics tournament, which at that time was back in Kansas City. What do you recall about that tournament? What kind of sense of pride was that for you and maybe for your father, getting Central to that elite level at that time?
It was a real thrill for us. Kind of a funny thing. In 49, my junior year, we actually had a better team. We won the Winco League, they called it at that time. But then we went to the playoffs, and we got beat by Gonzaga the first round, so we didn't make the tournament. And that year ended up with a downer. Actually, I think we had a better overall team in that year. But the following year, I think we finished second in the league as it was to a real good Eastern team. And we went to the playoffs again. And that year we beat Gonzaga in the playoffs and then beat Puget Sound in the finals to finally win a trip to Kansas City, which that was big time stuff, believe me.
Well, it's still big time to get to a national tournament like that. I'm just curious, this wasn't one of the questions I originally planned to ask, but did you fly to that tournament or did you drive to that tournament?
We took the train back. We could have flown, but it was too expensive at that time, I think. I don't know. Anyway, we ended up with a day-and-a-half train ride to and from Kansas City. And we had a good tournament. We ran into a seeded team in the first round from Kentucky and won the second round. And we got to the final 8 before being eliminated. So it was a real good cap to not just mine, but mine and teammates to our careers to wind it up that way.
You were a good player, and I've already alluded to that. Did you ever harbor, because professional basketball was, in its infancy, really, as we know it today at that time, but still it was operational. Did you ever have any thoughts of trying to play at a professional level?
Not really. If we're talking NBA, I don't know. It wasn't quite as widespread and prominent as it is today. But no, I kind of had my sights set on a teaching career and coaching, and that was as far as it went.
What was it about coaching that lured you to do that and follow in your father's footsteps and make that your career?
Well, it was a way to stay active in the game. I felt I had a good upbringing and I had a good knack for it. I hadn't planned to take over from my dad, but he encountered poor health, and when he left, I caught a break. When I was in that Navy program, we had to take a lot of math classes, and I ended up with a PE major, but I ended up going back to Central with a math major also. And that helped me get my first job at Puyallup High School. So I got a double break there from the Navy. But pro plans, no. I think I was realistic enough to know that that probably wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've already brought it up. Your first coaching job out of college was at Puyallup High School. You were a coach, and as you mentioned, you were a math teacher as well. How did you get that job, and were there other schools as well that were in the running to be the first coaching job for Dean Nicholson?
Not really. That was the best interview I'd had my senior year, and the superintendent came over and we hit it off pretty good. And then I knew there was some interest. So, and Puyallup was a great school, and that was a great league. Puget Sound League spanned. It's all changed now. I can't follow it anymore. I don't even know the schools they're talking about. But at that time, you had Puyallup, Clover Park, Sumner down in the south end. You had one school in Auburn, one high school in Auburn, one in Kent, one in Highline, huge school. The big monsters in that league were Highline with over 3,000 suits, and then Renton with this great coach, Irv Leifer, another huge opponent. And it was a great league. It was a great league. I was very fortunate to be able to start there.
Well, not only start there, you had a great 14-year run there. You won 5 of those Puget Sound titles. You said you didn't plan on succeeding your dad. How was it that it came together that you went from Puyallup to Central? And did you ever have any second thoughts about leaving high school?
Yes. My wife, we were in Puyallup for 14 years. Loved it. My wife loved it. Great town, great people. Worked with a lot of great cohorts at Puyallup High School. And we had a lot of friends and really had to give a lot of thought to leaving. But the lure of college basketball and the fact that it was replacing my dad overcame it all. And so we're back to Ellensburg, back to the Windy City.
Who were some of the better players or the best players, I guess, who played for you in Puyallup, who people may remember?
Early had a shooter, Nella Morgani. He played on a couple pretty good teams. Never saw a shot he didn't like. I didn't like him all, but when he was hot, he was tough. Ron Crow, the best athlete. Ron Crow was probably one of the best basketball players, if not the best basketball player I had the opportunity to coach Puyallup. And the best all-around athlete that I was involved with, and he was like a son to me, is Jim Clifton. He was a football quarterback, basketball guard, baseball pitcher, had a great junior year, averaged 18 points a game. At that time, that was a lot of scoring. No three-pointer or any of that going, but Jim was fell on got a real tough break. I think it was his second football game of his senior year. He sustained a knee injury. Had to have an operation, cost him the rest of his football season, cost him the entire basketball season. We were really looking forward to his senior year, and it never happened. And he did come back and pitch on the baseball team. He was a very good baseball player also. He was a tremendous athlete and later coached there at Puyallup.
When you decided to leave Puyallup and decided to come to Central, was there any trepidation about following your dad? Because he was, as I mentioned, legendary. Excuse me. He had 505 wins to his credit, and really, I would think trying to follow somebody who's legendary like that could have been tough. Did that ever enter into your thinking?
Well, he and I had I think, a great relationship, that coach and player, and also didn't let the father-son thing, because it wasn't a big problem for him or me. And like I say, you take a lot of flack from different areas, being the coach's son, but I just felt, well, I've got to play well and show that I deserve to be out there, and that gave me a little more motivation. And as far as replace my dad had fallen on hard times. He was in poor health, ended up passing away in '67. So I think he'd had a tough time. No other way to say it. The program was down a little bit when I got there in '64. And so that was a challenge I had to meet, and I was very happy to try to get it back where it belonged.
Well, and you did that without question. When you recorded your 506th victory, which then was the school record at Central and eclipsed your dad's mark by one win, was that a bittersweet moment?
I don't have great memories of that. I think my dad's record I had more wins. Of course, I coached longer. And they didn't play as many games in my dad's era. 20-game schedule used to be that was the college schedule. Now, holy cow, 30. You go to tournaments, you end up possibly 40 games. So I had a lot more chances to win games than he did, and I was very proud of the record that be able to tie with my dad with that, and a lot of pride there.
Yeah. You talk about college basketball games and seasons being longer now. I want to, and you had so many great teams. I had the pleasure to see a number of them, but the one I didn't get a chance to see was your 1969-70 team. Went 31-2. You can see their 33-game schedule. Took second in the nation that year. You were named the National Coach of the Year that year as well. Was that, if you had to rank them, your greatest Central team?
Well, from a win-loss basis, yes, I guess you'd have to say they went 31-2 and did a great job at Kansas City. We went back to Kansas City, I think, about 22 times over the course of my career, and we got to the Final Four 6 times. But that was the only team that got to the championship game. And we lost to a powerhouse team, 79-71, to Kentucky State. That there were other, excuse me, there were other real good teams and did a good job back there. And that team probably rose to the top.
Yeah. Well, I guess it should be mentioned as well that was a Kentucky State thoroughbred team that had 2 NBA players on its roster, Travis Grant and Elmore Smith, as I recall. So the only Central team that went to the championship had to be beaten by a team that had 2 NBA players on it. I think that's a story that in itself is quite remarkable.
I totally agree.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Who would you consider to be the best player you coached at Central, and why was that?
Well, that's a tough one. I was very fortunate, even though we were a smaller college than the majors around, we ended up with some great players. If I had to pick, I'm probably a little prejudiced here, but I think I'd have to say Mel Cox. He was there. I didn't recruit Mel. He was a sophomore my first year there. And so he played on my dad's last team. But the scoring he put up, he was a dominant low post player, great free thrower, great shooter, great person, number 2. And he kind of led the resurgence of building Central back up quickly. So I also, I don't know, I could mention a lot of names. Dave Allen was one of my personal favorites. Out of Yakima, 4-year starter, played on 4 Kansas City teams, and probably scoring wise, you wouldn't have matched up with some of the better scorers. And but he was a real factor in 4 real good years.
You and your father, Leo, collectively won 1,114 games. That's the highest father-son coaching total ever in college basketball history. You also were inducted into the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics Hall of Fame, where you joined your father there. You won lots of awards over your time, well-deserved awards, but was the NAIA Hall of Fame induction the top one?
You would have to rank right up there.
What other ones stand out for you?
I don't know. I think I'm no exception. I think most coaches, they're not hung up on being coach of the year or anything. Yeah, trying to do the best job you can with the personnel you're dealing with, and personal achievements. I don't know. You gain some of that with the team success, but that's about as far as it went for me.
Yeah. As the whole world knows, we're just coming off the Tokyo Olympics. And I don't know if many people realize that you were a part of Olympic basketball as well. You part of the Olympic training camp program for players in 1971 and 1972. Now, that was in an entirely different era of Olympic basketball because the United States at that point was still being represented by collegiate players. But when you look back on that, what was that experience like? And maybe who were some of the named players that you worked with at the Olympic training camp?
Assigned all of the visiting coaches certain teams, and I had the West team at Air Force Academy was the location of that. That was a great experience. Got to meet a lot of really famous coaches and famous players. The team they picked out of that camp is the one that lost to Russia in the famous, I don't know, they ended the game 3 times, or a lot of controversy there. But it was a pleasure to be part of that and meet other famous coaches who became good friends, and that was a real honor for me.
Who were some of the players on the team that you coached, that West squad?
Now you're putting me to the test. We had no player make the team.
Okay.
We had good players, obviously, but none. It was a huge camp. I don't know the total number of players, but I wasn't fortunate enough to have one of our players make the actual Olympic team. I worked in a second camp, and the outstanding part of that camp, he didn't play for me either. I was an assistant coach on another team. But Charles Barkley was the hero of that camp.
I bet you that. Was he as entertaining then, as you recall, as he is now?
He drew a crowd. Oh, if he was at the pinball machine, the crowd gathered just to watch him play pinball.
You talk about you made some lifelong coaching friends through your Olympic experience. Are any of those coaches, ones that would be names in a regular household?
Oh, several. I turned 95 last month, so you'll have to grant me a little leeway on recognition of anything. Although I'm blessed. The toughest part of turning 95 is you lose a lot of friends along the way, and I've had to deal with that. A lot of friends from Puyallup, ex-co-coaches, and Bob Ryan was one name that comes to mind. One of my dearest friends. He's passed away, but he and I had real good times together there. And I don't know. That's about all I can say along that line. Yes.
We talked about Puyallup. You won 192 games at Puyallup. You went on. You won 609 more games at Central. You also had wins as head coach of the Yakima Sun Kings of the CBA, Continental Basketball Association, Yakima Valley College, where you coached for a time as well. And maybe lesser known than any of those is the fact that you were the head coach of the Cheney Studs AAU team. How many seasons did you coach the Studs?
Well, I've got to make a correction here. Oh, wow. I see that picture of the Cheney Studs team. And they're all dressed in togs, and I'm there in street clothes at the end, which I think somebody figured I had to be the coach of that team. I'll have to correct all involved right now. I never coached the Cheney Studs. I don't know who coached them. The team was full of coaches. I think we kind of coached ourselves, but and that picture I cannot even explain. I don't know whether I had forgotten my uniform or had a sick day or whatever, but I was not the coach of the Cheney Studs. There were several probably wouldn't have been ahead of me for that job. I don't know if we had a coach, to be honest with you. We were full of coaches, but it was that was a great experience. Made a lot of nice friendships there.
So you were a player on that squad. What do you remember about playing with the Studs? Who did you play against, or where did you even play your games?
We were not in any league. We were kind of an exhibition team, I guess you'd call it. We played traveling teams that came through, other teams from the area. There was no league per se. I guess that's the best way to put it. We were just kind of an exhibition team, but we had a good time. We made a lot of real good friends with that experience.
Yeah. Were there other players on those Studs teams that people may recognize as well?
Oh yeah, the Husky players, John and Ed O'Brien from Seattle U, to name a few.
Bob Hoopbriggs, was that the UW player? Was he on the team?
Marv Hartman was involved there. We had a lot of fun.
They have an AAU national tournament in Denver, as I recall. Did any of those Studs teams participate in that?
I don't know. It was a total different. I don't think we ever played to get to that national tournament, or what. It was never in the conversation. We just played locally and sometimes a little bit out of the area, but no, I can't relate what goes on there now.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be maybe a tough question for you, but 1950 is the year you began your coaching career at Puyallup High School. How now, between 1950 and 2021, has the game of basketball, what's been the fundamental changes in basketball from that time to this time?
Wow. I guess you'd have to start out with the origin of the three-point area. Used to be, if you got a fast break, we go all out to try to get a layup. I watch a lot of pro basketball now. They're not interested in that layup. They're interested in the corner or the way out. The three-pointer has changed the game tremendously. Probably for the better, at least spectator-wise. Everything seems to be booming, but it was probably more of a defensive game and more get the ball inside and more of a power game than what you see now, but it's all enjoyable.
Yeah. If you could do it all over again, if you had the opportunity right now to begin a career, starting today with the way the present game is played, with the players, would you still want to go into becoming a basketball coach?
My short answer to that would be yes. I love the game, love the companionship, and even the relationship, coach-player relationship. They're not all perfect, but a lot of rewards. When the phone rings and it's the next player, it makes my day.
And you've had a lot of players who followed in your footsteps and gone on into coaching as well. There's no question. I know many of them keep in touch with you as well. So
one of my greatest joys out of the Puyallup High School experience, there's 5 coaches, counting myself, who coached at Puyallup High School that are in the Washington State Coaches Hall of Fame. Rich Hammermaster, who succeeded me and won a state title in '70, he has passed on, but he was a Hall of Fame coach in Washington. Jim Clifton, who is the athlete that I mentioned, and certainly one of the better players I was ever involved in, and he had a great coaching career. Wayne Delusky was on that 56 team with Ron Crow and Dave Filkins, and coached at the Tacoma High School, the new one, I can't think of it. Had a very successful coaching career. Bill Kelly went on to win state championships at Kashmir High School. I was very fortunate my first year at Central. My first team when I got there was #1. Mel Cox was in his sophomore year, but Bill Kelly and Jim Clifton were seniors on that team. And they had both played for me at Puyallup, and really had a big hand in helping me, and not only with their talent, they were both very good players, but to have that carryover along with Mel Crow and those two, a couple of real good recruits. Ed Smith from Grays Harbor would come to mind, made us for a real good start in 1964.
And 1,114 wins between you and your dad, 609 at Central, along with all these other coaching experiences. I think you're the best coach that's ever coached in the state of Washington collegiately, and I'll stand behind that statement. Well, Coach, we really appreciate your time today. This has been great to get to talk to you again. Maybe we can talk after your 96th birthday next year once again. I'd look forward to that if we could get together again and reminisce a little more.
And God bless.
And that concludes today's presentation. And on behalf of Rainier Asphalt and Concrete and the Shanneman Sports Museum of Tacoma and Pierce County, I do want to thank our guest again, Dean Nicholson, for appearing on today's show. I'm Robert Lowry, and we thank you for joining us on another edition of the Locker Room Chat.